This painting sold for $55 million, but the woman who made it struggled financially most of her life. Frida Kahlo is one of the most recognized artists today. Like, she's the poster child of authenticity, the woman who painted, raw, unfiltered emotions, the woman who never changed who she was in order to be more commercial. Somehow, her painting selling for $55 million today, that means it was already worth 2 point something million dollars at the time if adjusting for inflation. But people think that Frida Kahlo was an accident. But Frida was actually a branding genius. And in this video, I'm going to show you evidence that Frida was very intentional already about how she presented to the world. But that still does not answer the core mystery I was struggling with for the past month or two. Why is it that despite her intentions and her artistry about her personal branding, why is it that Frida Kahlo still struggled financially? Was it simply because of health issues? Don't think so. Was it that being authentic was incompatible with commercial success? Was there a way for her to be more successful commercially and financially without selling out, without changing her truth? That's what I want to uncover in this video. So I'm going to cover this in 3 parts. In the first part, I'm going to talk about Frida's branding genius. I'm going to share with you the moves, the strategic choices she made that made her an icon. Then I'm going to share with you 3 patterns that I discovered as I was digging into Frida's letters, Frida's memoirs, what art historians said about her, and her whole life, really. 3 patterns that held Frida back from making more money. Because, newsflash, Frida Kahlo was a human being. She had mindset issues, like pretty much everybody. She had her own limitations, her own demons that made great art, but also turned on her. And then lastly, the third thing I want to cover in this video is what she could have done differently in order to make more money, to be more successful financially in her life without changing the truth of who she was. If you don't know me, my name is Aliana, and I have been a marketer for more than 18 years, and I've been a marketing consultant for more than 10 years. Now, Frida Kahlo had beef with capitalism, okay? So the irony is I'm sitting here and I'm saying, I'm going to basically do a marketing session for Frida Kahlo. I'm going to run a thought experiment as if I'm giving her a marketing strategy. What would I say, knowing what I know about her life? But I'm going to take into account the fact that she was a communist and a Marxist. I'm going to take into account her set of values. It doesn't mean I, agree or disagree. I don't care. I really don't. I'm agnostic about labels and beliefs. I think those are distractions. I care what's in your heart. And my fidelity is to conscious creatives, artists, philosophers, mystics, deep thinkers, people who are building something real. My fidelity is towards those people thriving financially or thriving through capitalism, through money making, without having to change the truth of who they are. So if I can use my marketing background and my knowledge to serve that purpose, I'm a happy woman. Okay, with that, let's get right into it. So the myth we've been sold really is that Frida Kahlo was not interested in making money, that she was an accident. And Frida Kahlo was not an accident. She was crafted and created. The Frida Kahlo we think about, it was this character, the mythologized version of the human Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo, the real person behind the creation, was a raw, real, unfiltered artist, but she thought about money quite a bit. She talked quite often about how she wished she had more freedom to create, not have to depend on her husband, Diego Rivera, it was a toxic relationship. He was cheating on her. She was cheating on him. He cheated on her with her little sister. It was really bad. They divorced. They got back together a year later. It was messy, right? But she depended on him financially quite a bit, and in other ways too, emotionally as well. So she really wanted to be free and to express herself more freely, but she, for the longest time, refused to change her art to accommodate patrons. And I mean, I'm all for that. Like, I think that was actually a good move. I think she did the right thing by not just doing whatever patrons were asking her, because if you're an artist, you really do want to create whatever it is that you believe should be created, not constantly bend yourself to your buyer or your audience or whatever. That being said, She was intentional about the branding part. And to really see the evidence for that, you have to look at her whole life, or at least the bigger markers of her life, right? So just zooming out for a minute, and I'm going to try to get through this really as quickly as possible because there's a lot that happens. So there is evidence that Frida, already before she had the infamous bus accident, she was already somebody who loved to get attention. She contracted polio when she was 6 years old. And she says, in her own words, that her childhood was really sad. Her mom and dad, especially her mom, didn't necessarily give her the attention that she wished for until she got sick. Now, why is this important? When she had the accident in 1925, and if you don't know what happened to Frida, she was on a bus and literally got impaled. Literally had a rod of metal go through the left side of her body, out through her pelvis, shattered her right leg, which was already shorter because of the polio, and fractured bones everywhere in her ribcage and everywhere in her body. In total, in her life, she had 35 surgeries. Doctors didn't think she was going to survive, but she did. As soon as she had that accident and she was in her bed, her parents brought her an easel, painting supplies, because she liked to paint when she was a kid, and they installed a mirror. And this is where Frida spent a lot of time alone. And she said that she was really bored. I wonder if she had a phone to scroll, if she ever would have created something. But she thankfully did not have that. Instead, she had boredom, she had the mirror, and she was just studying herself obsessively. She said multiple times that I paint myself because I am the subject I know best. And what I believe happened here is that Frida mythologized herself. If you look at her paintings, you can see that Frida is looking at you. The subject is looking at you, as in wanting your attention. You know, if you're a painter, you know that when a subject is looking away, it's different for the painter than a person when they're looking straight in your eyes, like, look at me. But the interesting thing is, in her paintings, she has this stern, stoic face about her, which is not at all how she is in real life. If you read her letters, she's constantly voicing how much pain she's in and whatnot, but that's who she aimed to be. But I think what happened is that she mythologized herself in that she really wanted to be perceived as this warrior. She likely received a lot of attention when she had the accident, in the same way that she received a lot of attention when she was a kid and contracted polio. The mustache, the unibrow, and all of that has already been there. Like, it's not invented, but it was exaggerated. The dresses that she wore, the Tijuana dresses, actually, Frida had never even been to the area where these dresses originated. And this is in her own words. Again, she's saying, I've never been there, I have no connection there, but I really like these dresses, so I wear them. You might think this is appropriation. I don't think so, not only because she's Mexican, but also because who gives a fuck? She liked it. She was honest about the fact that it was an aesthetic choice, and so she wore it. But Frida played loose with the facts. One of the things she did is she reinvented her origin story, and she told people that she was born in 1910, but actually she was born in 1907. But she said she was born in 1910 to align her birth with the start of the Mexican Revolution. So Frida was very much handpicking the pieces of information and sometimes changing certain things a little bit in order to create or portray this persona that basically was born at the start of the Mexican Revolution, that is championing in her art Marxism and communism, and who is very proud of being Mexican, even though her father was German. So one might say, well, this is not branding, this is self-expression, this is art. And I would say, what's the difference? Because you could actually go out there and push your way into people's awareness. The brand is going to be created anyway. The perception is going to be created anyway. The choice is, are you doing it consciously or unconsciously? Frida spent way too much time handpicking the colors, the shapes, the icons, the stories, the words, the associations. It was all crafted with way too much intention it's very present in the greatest artists, is that they would create their own universes. They would not just make great paintings. You look at somebody like Michael Jackson, for example. He created his own persona, his own universe, with or without a marketing team or a creative team. He would do that anyway because he's an artist. You look at Lady Gaga, when you look at Frida Kahlo, when you look at Salvador Dali, I'm going to talk about him in a little bit. You look at a lot of these artists, this is the thing that makes them different, is that their art includes, at some level, the choice of the persona that they would create. And in Frida's handpicking of what to share and not to share, part of what she did is that she constantly hid behind Diego as Diego's wife, right? She is this self-taught painter who's not at all, not at all a professional, right? That's the character she was trying to portray, but the reality is that she actually went to one of the most prestigious schools, where she was, I think she was like 1 in 35 females out of 2,000 plus students. And this was not a school that was accessible to most people. Now, is this authentic or inauthentic? I think this is authentic. Other than the story about her birth year, that could be a whole philosophical conversation about ethics and whatnot. Does it matter if it's not true but it's not hurting anybody? I don't know. But what I do know is handpicking what to share and not to share in order to craft a story. I don't think that's inauthentic. It's like when you go to a restaurant and they create a specific atmosphere and they make sure that the lights are a certain kind of way and the colors and the energy of the place is a certain kind of way. And then you get the plate and it looks beautiful and it tastes delicious. But do you want, do you want to see the lamb getting slaughtered? Do you want to see that? Do you want to see the truth? Do you want to see the truth of that? Because that is not what you're signing up for. If you sign up to see magic, you want to be fooled. You want to believe at some level that it's magic. It's not. But if the magician were to explain it to you, that would take away all the fun. That would take away all the artistry and the mystery from it. So yeah, I don't think it was inauthentic that she handpicked something like the Tijuana dresses, even though she had no connection to Tehuantepec, just because it was an aesthetic choice and she liked it. I like the fact that she was honest about it and she didn't claim that she came from that region. But like I said, she played loose with facts, and I don't judge that. I don't think that's necessarily the right approach, but yeah, to each their own. I mean, that's what she did. And the point of this is that Frida was very intentional about this. Frida was no accident. Frida, the character, the mythology, was a masterpiece, was a piece of art created by Frida Kahlo, the human being. The mindset challenges that Frida experienced. So we know that Frida struggled financially most of her life and really only started to see some success towards the end of her life. Unfortunately, she didn't live very long, so she didn't get to enjoy for too long. But for most of her life, she depended on Diego Rivera, her husband at the time, and she was known as Diego's wife. I look at Diego's art. I'm not a connoisseur, but I look at it, I look at Frida. I honestly much rather look at Frida's creations, much more interesting. That's me. But Diego was very successful, and Frida sought him out when she was pretty young. Shortly after the accident, she found him. He's a fellow artist in the school, and so she went up to him and she was like, "What do you think of my art?" And he said, "Oh, this is incredible." I mean, he recognized that she had some raw talent there and some strong emotion in what she created, and he encouraged her. This is great, except she started to heavily depend on Diego's approval. She thought likely if Diego saw her, then she was a good artist. In other words, she put him on some sort of pedestal. So there were really 3 things that distracted Frida and held her back from making more money. The first thing was energy leaks. Frida was hemorrhaging energy all over in her life. Like, her lifestyle was just, obviously she had the accident, okay? There's no denying that she had health issues. She was in a lot of pain. She had lots of surgeries. She was taking painkillers. But also she was married to this guy who wasn't really good for her, and they were caught in this toxic relationship where he had cheated on her with her little sister and a bunch of other people. She cheated on him too. They got divorced. They got back together a year later. She said that she had 2 major accidents. The first one was the bus, and Diego was the second accident. And she said Diego was the worst. So that should tell you something. He was 20 years older than her, and she put him on a pedestal, sought his validation, depended on him financially, and also he was just not good for her. It was a complicated relationship. And with that and her health issues, she also was not managing this in a very healthy way. Not only did she not cut this person off, but she was constantly drinking alcohol. She was taking painkillers to numb away emotional pain. So there's evidence that she was doing this, not necessarily because she always needed it, but she did have chronic pain, but she basically relied a lot on those things. But the worst energy leak for Frida, I think, was her mind, her thoughts. Frida was constantly judging people and constantly having these bitter, negative thoughts about everyone and everything. If you read her letters, you see that she's so judgy. Like she would. At one time, she was writing a letter to her mom about after going to the US, and she was like, these gringos look horrible. And I was reading that, I was like, why would you say that? It was like out of left field. Hey mom, how are you? It's nice to reconnect after so long. By the way, white people look like shit. She's talking about rich people who did not buy her art, and she's like, these rich sons of bitches. Yeah, she had some very interesting thoughts about everyone and everything, and she felt entitled to those people's money. Now, here's the thing. You can't judge people like that without judging yourself, because this kind of judgment is a muscle that you have to apply all over. So in all likelihood, Frida's inner world was brutal. She probably thought so poorly of herself. I mean, it's evident when you look at the choices that she made and how she treated herself that she didn't think very highly of herself. So when you add it up, pain, physical and mental, toxic marriage, negative thoughts, alcohol, painkillers, surgeries. I mean, it's a miracle she was creating so much. I think she did incredibly well for herself, considering everything. The art that she was creating saved her life, but I don't think that she had any energy left really to promote herself and her art, or to create connections or do anything. So that was the first pattern, leaking energy instead of directing it towards her work and her life and building her a name for herself. Well, the second pattern was this love-hate relationship with said, rich sons of bitches, in her own words. Frida spent some time in the US. She was pretty upset about what she thought was insane inequality. But she thought she needed those same people that she resented and hated. She thought she needed them. So she wanted their approval, but she judged them. But she needed and wanted them, but she wanted to push them away. Basically, like, you can imagine what kind of mindfuckery comes out of that. She always said it was about capitalism and capitalism sucks and whatever. Maybe, but I don't think that was the core of the issue, actually. I think it was deeper than that for her. I think it was personal. She said in one of the letters that one could never belong with these people. No matter how hard we try, we will never belong with them. If you look at her life, Frida grew up pretty comfortable, actually. Like I said, her father was a German photographer and her mom was Mexican, but they were comfortable. And then the Mexican Revolution happened. They basically lost a lot of money and, experienced downward mobility. And likelihood, this was not just political for her. This was quite personal pain. There's just like preemptive rejection of the other, because she neither belonged with the people, the workers of Mexico, the really poor people in Mexico. She didn't belong with them. She went to prestigious schools. She was pretty comfortable growing up, but also she did not belong to the upper class, or she didn't feel like she belonged anywhere. So she had this preemptive rejection of, I will judge you as fake and reject you before you reject me. And this is a sort of protection mechanism, essentially. It made her feel safe, but it kept her struggling. This meant she could not build strong relationships with rich people because she was constantly judging them. And yeah, I'm not saying she should have kissed ass, because there were wealthy patrons who aligned with her values, but she couldn't see them because she was trying really hard to please or connect with or be liked by or be understood by the patrons that she judged. So there were the Gelmans, for example, this rich couple from Russia that supported her work because, Russia at the time. There was this progressive Hollywood actor who bought her stuff. There was this friend that she had as a kid, Mario Safa, I think his name was, if I'm not mistaken. This guy bought 30 of her paintings off the easel. That means he did not even see the final product. He was like, okay, Frida, I need 30 portraits, whichever way you create them. Awesome, of I think his family members, paid, done, make them your way. So he didn't even try to change her or change her art. There were people who could afford her work, who aligned with her political views and with her values, and who supported Mexican art and who supported her without expecting her to change a damn thing about her paintings. But she was not focused there. Instead, she was looking at the capitalists and the rich sons of bitches, in her own words, and wondering why she could not belong with them. So that brings me to the third pattern that kept her from making money, and that's sleeping on opportunities right under her nose. Frida could have made so much more money from so many different places. She actually taught towards the end of her life. When she was teaching at La Esmeralda, she was really sweet and warm and welcoming, and her students loved her. So she was not mean. Frida was more like a She's more like a chihuahua who would bark at you, but she's sweet with people like students where she didn't feel any threat. But when there is a perceived threat, people could judge her, could reject her, like wealthy patrons, capitalists. She was hostile and she was bitter and she was angry and she would push people away. So the truth is, she was not mean-natured, just terrified, which I think is really sad. And amongst the opportunities, obviously, the tons of progressive people who existed at the time, who saw her work and wanted her work as is. But she also could have taught for money. I know she wanted to teach as this charitable thing, but she could have also taught people who had the money or wanted to pay for it. She could have sold to people who are aligned to her. Like I said a million times, they exist. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, find people who get you, find people who understand your vision and appreciate it and love it and are not trying to change you. Why make your life more difficult? She also could have made money by being commissioned with governments and organizations that were aligned with her political views. Like, she could have, for example, painted for communists, for Marxists. Of course, with her health condition, it wouldn't have been possible for her to go and paint a mural the same way that her husband would, but she could have done a lot more work for, again, like, put herself out there. But like I mentioned in the first pattern, her energy was all over the place. Like, if you're fighting with your husband and he's cheating on you and you're drinking your alcohol and whatever, how much time and energy do you have left in a day to think, maybe I should, go connect with so-and-so to find an opportunity to paint for, you get the idea. She often liked to also paint her own medical supplies and her plasters, and so those could have been products. I don't know, like, I'm talking about a time before the internet. Like, now the sky is not even the limit. You can sell physical products, digital products directly to consumers. You can sell memberships, you can sell high ticket, you can sell low ticket, you can get Patreons, you can sell you can sell group programs, one-on-ones, you can sell art, in either form, physical or digital. You can make money in endless ways. You can make money off of views. You can make money in endless ways. Just find what works for you. Find what works with your energy, with your beliefs, with your values. She wasn't looking at those things because she was looking elsewhere. When she was not drunk and sick and hurt by her husband. So something I saw in her letters that I thought was super interesting is she was talking about Salvador Dali and his art dealer. She could recognize what her version of success would have been, because Salvador Dali was also highly expressive, but he was commercially successful, and in likelihood, she thought that he was successful because he had the right connections to the right art dealers. But I think she missed the rest of the story. Yes, art dealers are important. Connections are important. Salvador's wife, Gala, was actually his wife / manager / strategist / everything else. And before her, Salvador was struggling as an artist because he couldn't focus and he, had lots of weaknesses, and his wife complimented him and helped him. So the lesson here is get support where you need it. You don't have to marry it. You don't have to marry a person to help you out, but find people, whether you hire them or you surround yourself with them, find people who help you in the areas where you need help. But that was not the full answer. Salvador, like Frida, branded himself relentlessly. He had a story. He had a character. He actually embodied it. He took it so seriously that he would wake up every morning and ask himself, what would Salvador Dali do? And then go do that. So he embodied this every single day. Yeah, we all know the iconic mustache. The visual identity was very much part of the branding, but branding is not about just the visual identity, it's everything else, right? It's basically everything that you do that gets associated with you. So he had the eccentric stunts, he had the quotable sound bites, but he promoted himself shamelessly. Salvador Dali did not apologize for wanting to be both recognized as an artist and wealthy, financially and commercially successful. So he opened himself up to opportunities. He would create logos, whatever it is that was an artistic expression and would make him money. If it wasn't misaligned with his personal values, he'd just do it. He had no shame. One time, Salvador Dali drove a Rolls-Royce from Spain to Paris to carry 500 kilos of cauliflower just to give a lecture about how the universe is contained in a cauliflower. This is what we would call guerrilla marketing. Stunts that make people talk about things. He may not have called it guerrilla marketing, but that's what he was doing. It's performance art. It's performance as art, art as marketing, marketing as art. It's all the same. This is why I said, and I keep saying this when I hear artists, creatives, authentic people, conscious people, say things like, I don't want to do branding, I don't want to do marketing, it's not authentic. I'm like, oh my gosh. You don't want to send cold DMs on LinkedIn. Yes, I get it. You don't want to send a cold email. You don't want to cold call people. I wouldn't want to do that. You don't have to do that. You don't have to create complicated funnels on the internet. You don't have to create full scarcity. You don't have to approach branding and marketing and selling that way. You can approach it as a natural expression of who you are. You can do the things that you enjoy doing. And by the way, I think this is important to note, because some of you might be watching this and thinking, well, what if she's an introvert? And I hear this all the time. I'm an introvert. I don't like attention. I'm an introvert. And I'm like, well, you're an introvert. That's not an excuse to hide. You can be an introvert and visible. You don't have to be loud. The difference is big energy versus loud energy. Loud is loud. Big is just big presence. Both Dali and Kahlo had big energy, big presence, but Kahlo was more quiet, reserved, while Salvador Dali was more open. I don't want to say more eccentric. They were both eccentric, but you can sense that he was a lot more willing to put himself out there than Frida. That's okay. If you enjoy deep work behind the scenes and you don't want to be posting 3 times a day on social media, please don't do that. It's okay. If you're introverted and you don't want to be talking to people all day, you don't have to do that, but you've got to find ways that you enjoy to promote yourself and your work. So whether you're a Frida or a Dali or somewhere in between or some other variation of that, there are ways that would work for you. The other thing about Dali that I think Frida missed is that he protected his energy very well. So Salvador Dali also had his demons. He had identity issues. He had intimacy issues. He had issues with his father. He was not free from trauma, but he channeled it into his work. He channeled it into promoting himself, not self-destruction. And he was surrounded by better people, let's just say that. So Salvador Dali had the support system. Yes, he branded himself too, but he was shamelessly marketing himself. He did not apologize for wanting to be wealthy. He made the right connections. Yes, knowing the right art dealers and whatnot. He also, he wasn't afraid of hyping himself up. Frida was surprised whenever people would buy her art. But Salvador Dali created hype around his work and he backed it up. It wasn't empty. Like I see a lot of people, and I was also guilty of this too, where I'd be like, oh, I don't want to hype myself up because if I hype myself, people will be just, I'd rather be this like sleeper, right? Like this diamond that nobody knows about, this gem, this hidden gem. There's this like fantasy that people don't know about anything about my work, and then they somehow hear about me from somebody and that person is blown away by my work. This has happened, which is why it's so addictive when you get a word of mouth or somebody says something about you and people want to work with you and then they're blown away. But also it keeps you small. And Salvador Dali had no problem being like, I am the shit, and then working on his art and on himself to actually be the shit so that the hype is backed by amazing, incredible work. So Frida missed the full puzzle. She just looked at his connections. She looked at the art dealers he was working with, and she thought, that's what I needed. And what she didn't know is that she had everything she needed already to be more commercially successful, but it was not about connections. It was about what was happening here. That was it. Energy, people that she's surrounded with, the coping mechanisms, the micro choices she was making day to day, not whether or not she had access to the same art dealers that Salvador Dali had access to. So that brings me to the third part. What could have Frida done in order to be more commercially successful without compromising who she was? I already talked a little bit about what Salvador Dali did that she could have done too. But this is what I would have told her. First of all, stop the energy leaks. The biggest one. This is the biggest thing. You've got to cut people like Diego out of your life, or at least set some limits. Accept that the accident happened. There's no changing it. You've got to find healthier ways to deal with the pain, physical or emotional. Redirect your bitterness into creation, not judgment. Let go of what hurts you. You need to bring all those parts to yourself instead of dispersing them everywhere and spending them and wasting them on other people and other things. You need to bring those back to yourself so that you can take care of Frida and Frida's vision. The second thing I would have told her is you've got to see yourself. Frida was constantly focused on being seen by other people while simultaneously hiding. So stop relying on pain to be seen by other people. This constant need to burn herself to the ground so that she can rise back as a phoenix. This story gets old. She had a genius, and I would have told her to see her genius as it was. She didn't need to constantly play into, I struggled, I broke down, I got cheated on, and then I did this. I had an accident, and then I did that. I went through shit, and then I picked myself up again, and then I did it. This cycle is not necessary. You're incredible at what you do. You have a genius. Own it. Done. Heal the class wound. Not everyone with money is fake. Not everyone with money is out to get you. And know that you don't have to focus there. You don't have to focus on the people that don't see you. You can work with people who want you and your art exactly as it is. So instead of constantly trying to get the approval of the same people that you judge and despise, pretend they're not there, disconnect, and focus on the people who do want your art and your creativity as is and who align with your vision and your values. Create a universe that people want to join. Instead of saying capitalism sucks and communism is the only truth, you can try, I'm a communist. You're free to be a capitalist. Here's why I believe in da da da. Here's my stance. Here's why I stand for this. But you're okay. You're okay. Like I don't hate you. I'm not going to call you names. But this is my world. If you want to join it, you're free to join it. But this is what I stand for. There's no hate towards you. There's no pushing you away. Make supporting you like being part of something bigger rather than something that people feel like they have to fight for you to see them. Because your judgment, even if you don't voice it, people feel it and it pushes them away. So focus on what you do want, the universe you want to create that attracts the right people. And those who don't resonate with it will select themselves out, But you've got to create the world that you want, not fight against the world that you don't want. Focus on finding the right, most aligned monetization paths. Frida was incredible with students. She could have extended that same energy to other people who are willing and able to pay for it. So teaching, selling to collectors who aligned with her, murals for organizations and governments that aligned with her, to stop thinking that her only path to freedom was to please the people that she didn't like, and start focusing on the people who already got her. Get help in the areas where you need support. Find help in areas that you're not good at or don't enjoy, or if you keep getting distracted, you need somebody to bring you back on track. You've got to get the support. Those people can help you either do these things for you that you don't enjoy or are not good at, or they can show you ways that you can get good at those things and start enjoying them. That's what I do for my clients. My clients don't want to do marketing the mainstream ways. They don't want to do branding in the mainstream ways. They want to do it their way. And so I show them how to do it their way. I help them refine their voice and translate what's internal for them to the external to make it commercially viable without changing the truth of what they're delivering. I would have told her, make sure to channel your energy and your attention every day into your work and promoting yourself. So you're either creating your art or you're connecting with people who can put your art in front of the right people, or you're doing something to elevate your work and elevate your life. I would have told her, the people that you admire, like Diego, like Salvador Dali or whatever, and wondered how they were successful, they are not cut from a different cloth. You actually have the same, if not more, abilities, and you have a genius about you, but you're focusing on other people. You're comparing yourself to other people, and you're not seeing what you do have. You don't have to do it their way, but understand that their success is attributed to a combination of things, not just one piece of a puzzle, but an entire puzzle. Frida had a branding genius, but she lost control of the character. The character turned on her. This woman who was in pain, that she created this mythology of this warrior who was always in pain, was so stern and so stoic. That character turned against her because she lost control of it. She forgot that she was playing a game, and her personal life as this character got in the way. Frida Kahlo died on July 13th, 1954, and she was only 47 years old. At this point, she was already starting to get recognized, but unfortunately, she would only enjoy it for a few years before she died. The last journal entry she wrote, "I hope the exit is joyful, and I hope to never return." The truth is, Frida was not an icon just because of her genius personal branding, but because she was truly a phenomenal artist. She was honest, even if a lot of people debate that. I think she was honest because she was honest about her feelings. She was honest about her values. She was honest about her thoughts. And she didn't want to compromise on those things. And that's what made her iconic. She painted the truth. But she believed that being authentic meant struggle. She believed that anyone who had a different preference for her art was trying to control her. She didn't think that she could make money with more ease from people who already believed in what she was creating or saw her art. She probably believed she could never be accepted as she was. So she rejected people first. I think the tragedy about Frida's life was not the accident, but that so much of her personal pain was self-inflicted. The judgment, the hiding behind the ego, the thinking that she didn't have options, the pushing people away. A lot of these things were choices. They may not have been conscious choices, but they were choices. And I can't help but think about this. Like, what if Frida had known that a lot of patrons out there wanted her exactly as she was, and they were willing and able to pay for her art? What if she'd surrounded herself with more supportive people instead of someone like Diego? What if she had healthier ways to cope with her pain? I think she would have lived a much longer life, and she would have had a much better experience. So I hope that you can see that it wasn't the fact that she was authentic that was holding her back from being commercially successful, because there's no conflict between those two things. The conflict is only internal. It's believing that you can only earn money if you compromise. It's judging people who don't see you while simultaneously wanting to be seen by them instead of focusing on those who do. It's fear that makes you hide and reject before you are rejected. Those are the things that create the struggle, not your authentic self-expression. Frida built an incredible brand identity, but she didn't realize she could be successful without changing anything about herself. And I hope you don't make the same mistake. I want to ask you for a favor. If you found this video helpful or if you enjoyed it, could you please share it with one person that you think will benefit from it? It would really mean the world to me. And if you do, please put a comment. I want to know. I want to say thank you. And it just makes me happy to know that you've done that. Also, if you enjoyed this, I will leave a link in the description for my newsletters. I don't know when I will post next time, but you'll be the first to know. Thanks for watching. See you next time.